Have you ever wondered how Amish families feed 10 children through an entire winter without a single trip to the grocery store? The answer is in their cellar. Here are 10 items every Amish pantry contains that last 25 years without refrigeration or electricity. White rice. White rice stored in a sealed, airtight container lasts 25 to 30 years without refrigeration. Amish families buy it in 50-pound sacks and transfer it into metal cans or glass jars. The key is removing oxygen and moisture. Some families add oxygen absorber packets. Others seal lids with wax. White rice outlasts brown rice because milling removes the oils that cause brown rice to go rancid within months. A single 50-pound purchase feeds a large family for months. The Amish buy it because it is the cheapest, reliable calories available for long-term storage. Honey. Raw honey is the only food in human history with a documented shelf life of thousands of years. Archaeologists have found honey in Egyptian tombs dating back 3,000 years that was still perfectly edible. Honey's extraordinary shelf life comes from its chemistry. It contains less than 20% water, making it hostile to bacterial growth. It is naturally acidic. It contains hydrogen peroxide produced by an enzyme from bees. Together, these properties create an environment where virtually no microorganism can survive. Crystallized honey is not spoiled honey. Placing a jar in warm water returns it to liquid within minutes. Amish families use honey as a sweetener, cough remedy, wound treatment, and food preservative. A single well-stored jar will be just as usable by the grandchildren who inherit it. Salt. Salt does not expire. It cannot. Salt is a mineral. Minerals do not spoil or degrade over time. A sealed container purchased today will be chemically identical in 100 years. Amish families store salt in large quantities because they use it for far more than seasoning. Salt is the foundation of food preservation. Pork packed in salt lasts months without refrigeration. Sauerkraut is nothing more than cabbage and salt fermented together. Salt draws moisture out of food through osmosis. Without moisture, bacteria cannot grow. Without bacteria, food does not spoil. Every canning project, every meat preservation effort, and every fermentation batch depends on having enough salt available. A 26-ounce canister costs under $2 and lasts indefinitely. Dried beans. Dried beans stored in airtight containers last indefinitely. Researchers testing beans stored for 25 years found them still viable, still nutritious, and still capable of being cooked into edible food. The beans may take longer to soften during cooking after many years of storage, but they remain safe and nutritious throughout. Amish families store pinto beans, navy beans, black beans, kidney beans, and lentils in sealed metal cans or glass jars. Combined with white rice, dried beans form a complete protein containing every essential amino acid the human body requires. This combination has sustained populations around the world for centuries. A single pound of dried beans costs under $2 and contains roughly 10 servings of protein-rich food. An Amish family storing 50 pounds of assorted dried beans has a protein source that requires no refrigeration, no special handling, and no ongoing cost. The beans sit in the cellar and wait. They can wait for 25 years without losing their value. When famine, flood, storm, or economic hardship arrives, the beans are there. They have always been there, and they will continue to be there long after the crisis has passed. Hard winter wheat. Hard winter wheat berries stored in sealed airtight containers last 25 to 30 years without refrigeration. Wheat berries are the whole unprocessed kernel of the wheat plant. Unlike flour, which begins to oxidize and go stale within 6 to 12 months, whole wheat berries retain their nutrition and baking potential almost indefinitely when properly stored. Amish families store wheat berries rather than pre-milled flour for exactly this reason. When they need flour, they grind the berries fresh using a hand-cranked grain mill. The flour produced from freshly ground wheat berries is nutritionally superior to store-bought flour that has been sitting in a warehouse for months. It contains the germ, the bran, and the endosperm of the original kernel. The oils in the germ are still fresh because they were protected inside the intact kernel until the moment of grinding. An Amish household with a supply of hard winter wheat berries and a grain mill has an essentially unlimited supply of fresh flour available on demand. No grocery store required, no expiration date to worry about. Just wheat that has been waiting patiently in a sealed can for the moment it is needed. Apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar has an indefinite shelf life because it is already fermented. The fermentation process that produces it also preserves it permanently. The acetic acid content of apple cider vinegar creates an environment so acidic that virtually no harmful microorganism can survive. Amish families store apple cider vinegar by the gallon in sealed glass containers in their cellars. They use it for food preservation, cleaning, and medicinal purposes. As a food preservative, it is the base brine for every jar of pickles, pickled beets, pickled eggs, and canned relish in the Amish cellar. A jar of vegetables preserved in apple cider vinegar brine will survive 2 years or more in a cool, dark cellar without any refrigeration. As a cleaning agent, it replaces commercial cleaners on kitchen surfaces, in drains, and on laundry. As a medicinal, it treats sore throats, settles stomachs, and reduces fever when applied externally. 1 gallon purchased today will still be fully functional and chemically unchanged in 25 years. The Amish do not think of apple cider vinegar as a single-purpose product. They think of it as one of the most versatile tools in their cellar. Cornmeal. Cornmeal stored properly in airtight containers lasts 20 to 30 years without refrigeration. The key is removing moisture and oxygen from the storage container before sealing it. Amish families store degerminated cornmeal rather than whole grain stone ground cornmeal for long-term storage because the milling process that removes the germ also removes the oils that cause whole grain cornmeal to go rancid within months. Degerminated cornmeal retains its baking properties and nutritional value for decades. When sealed correctly, Amish kitchens use cornmeal constantly. Cornbread baked in a cast iron skillet is a staple at the Amish table. Cornmeal mush cooked in water or milk and served with butter and maple syrup is a common breakfast. Cornmeal is used to coat fried fish and chicken. It thickens soups and stews. It forms the base of traditional Pennsylvania Dutch dishes that have been served at Amish tables for generations. A 50-pound bag of degerminated cornmeal stored in a sealed metal can in a cool cellar represents years of baking capacity purchased in a single transaction at a fraction of what the same cornmeal would cost bought in small quantities. Over time, white granulated sugar stored in a sealed, airtight container lasts indefinitely. Like salt, it is a mineral compound that does not support microbial life. Bacteria and mold require moisture and organic material to grow. White sugar contains neither in sufficient quantity to sustain them when properly stored and sealed. Amish families store sugar in large quantities because it serves multiple critical functions beyond sweetening food. Sugar is a preservative. Jam and jelly made with high sugar concentrations resist spoilage because the sugar binds the available water and prevents microbial growth. Sugar syrups used in canning fruit preserve the texture and flavor of the fruit while extending its shelf life. Sugar also feeds the yeast used in bread baking. It provides quick energy in the form of calories during periods of hard physical labor. An Amish family canning 100 jars of preserves in a single fall season uses enormous quantities of sugar. Having 50 or 100 pounds stored in sealed containers in the cellar ensures that the canning season can proceed regardless of what is happening at the grocery store. A 5-pound bag of white sugar costs under $4 at any store. It will still be perfectly functional in 25 years if stored correctly. Dono sections made 120 to 120 words ad Cartahun. Big pops. Dried corn. Dried field corn stored in sealed airtight containers lasts 25 years or more without refrigeration. This is not sweet corn. It is field corn allowed to dry completely on the stalk before harvest. The kernels are hard, dense, and contain almost no moisture. Amish families grow and dry their own field corn every year. After harvest, the kernels are shelled from the cob and stored in sealed containers. Dried corn is ground into cornmeal as needed using a hand-cranked grain mill. It is also soaked in an alkaline solution in a process called nixtamalization that releases niacin and other nutrients locked inside the kernel. Nixtamalized corn is then ground into masa for traditional flatbreads. Dried corn is also fed directly to chickens and pigs as supplemental feed during winter months when grazing is not possible. An Amish farm that grows and dries its own corn produces a food source that serves the family table, feeds the animals, and sits in storage for decades without any ongoing cost beyond the initial seed and labor. It is one of the most self-sufficient food storage strategies in agricultural history, and the Amish have practiced it continuously since their first settlements in America. What makes dried corn especially valuable in the Amish system is that it is entirely self-renewing. An Amish family that saves seed corn from each harvest never needs to purchase corn again. They plant in spring, they harvest in fall, they dry and store the kernels. They save a portion for next year's planting. This cycle has repeated on Amish farms for over 300 years without interruption. The initial investment is essentially zero beyond labor. The return is a food source that feeds both people and animals through every winter, regardless of what happens to prices, supply chains, or the outside economy. No store, no supplier, no dependency, just seed, soil, and the knowledge of how to close the loop completely. Baking soda. Baking soda stored in a sealed, airtight container lasts indefinitely as a cleaning and medicinal agent. As a leavening agent for baking, it remains effective for 3 to 5 years before losing potency. Amish families store baking soda in large quantities because they use it constantly in both the kitchen and the household. In the kitchen, it leavens every batch of quick bread, every pan of cornbread, every plate of pancakes, and every biscuit baked without commercial yeast. Mixed with an acidic ingredient like buttermilk or apple cider vinegar, it produces carbon dioxide bubbles that cause batter to rise. Without baking soda, an Amish kitchen that relies on scratch baking every day would be unable to produce the quick breads that appear at every meal. Beyond baking, baking soda cleans cast iron without stripping seasoning. It deodorizes storage areas, chicken coops, and outhouses. Mixed with water, it soothes insect stings and bee stings. Mixed with salt, it substitutes for commercial toothpaste. It extinguishes small grease fires when poured directly on the flame. It softens laundry water and boosts the cleaning power of homemade soap. A 1-pound box costs under $2. For long-term storage, Amish families buy it in bulk quantities and seal it in glass jars. The cleaning and medicinal uses remain fully effective indefinitely. The baking power is rotated every few years to ensure fresh potency for daily cooking. What separates baking soda from most pantry items is how completely it replaces products that most modern households buy separately and expensively. A single sealed container replaces commercial toothpaste, kitchen cleaner, laundry softener, fire extinguisher, insect sting treatment, and deodorizer simultaneously. Each of those products costs several dollars individually. Baking soda costs under $2 for all of them combined. The Amish did not arrive at this understanding through minimalism as a philosophy. They arrived at it through generations of practical experience in households, where every dollar spent on a single-purpose product was a dollar that could not be spent on seed, feed, or medicine. Baking soda earned its permanent place in the Amish cellar not because it was cheap, but because it worked for everything and never ran out of uses. These 10 items form the foundation of very Amish cellar and every Amish family's food security strategy. White rice that feeds a family for months from a single 50-pound purchase. Raw honey that outlasts the people who store it by generations. Salt that never expires and preserves everything it touches. Dried beans that provide complete protein for 25 years without a single trip to a store. Hard winter wheat berries that produce fresh flour on demand decades after purchase. Apple cider vinegar that preserves food, cleans surfaces, and treats illness from a single gallon that never goes bad. Cornmeal that bakes 100 years of cornbread from a sealed can in a cool cellar. White sugar that sweetens and preserves indefinitely. None of these items require electricity. None require refrigeration. None require special equipment or complicated storage systems. They require only a cool, dark cellar, airtight containers, and the knowledge that self-sufficiency is not built in a single shopping trip, but accumulated over years of consistent stocking and rotating. The Amish have been building cellars like this for 300 years, not out of fear, not out of prepper philosophy, out of the practical understanding that a family that controls its own food supply controls its own survival. These 10 items are how they do it. They are how they have always done it. And they will continue doing it long after the grocery store model everyone else depends on has proven itself fragile in ways that a sealed can of white rice in a cool cellar never will.